Anonymous video has been produced to show you, the people of Scotland, 10 of the many failures of the Scottish National Party over the last 14 years of power. The information that is used throughout this video has been gained from public sources and can be proven to have been gathered from factual resources. In May of 2021, the election to decide the party who will run Scottish affairs will take place. The leader of that winning party will be the First Minister of Scotland. For the last 14 years, the Scottish National Party have been in power. Alex Salmond was First Minister for the first of those 7 years. And Nicola Sturgeon has been First Minister for the last 7 years. Scottish National Party do not have a majority in the Scottish Parliament. However, by agreeing with the Green Party to address climate change proposals, the SNP have the Green Party to give them support when voting in Parliament. The Scottish National Party are propped up by the Green Party in the Scottish Parliament, and this allows the SNP's agenda to pass through the Scottish Parliament very much unhindered. Scotland do not actually have a government. They have a devolved administration. When Alex Salmond was First Minister, he cleverly changed the term, unnoticed by anyone, from devolved administration to government. As a result of that, we are paying for an army of politicians, advisors and administrators that are not required to run the Scottish Parliament. The amount of staff in Holyrood are actually surplus to requirements, and the administration there could do its job with far less people. The Scottish National Party need the Green Party to support them. So, the SNP agreed with the Green Party to address the subject of climate change. One idea was to build wind farms, with the intention of reducing the quantity of CO2 carbon going into the atmosphere. Scotland has the 6th largest wind farms in the United Kingdom. In addition, there are many smaller farms throughout Scotland, run by Scottish Power. All of these together total 3,000 turbines. Many turbines are not being used and are switched off. The owners, however, are still being paid from public funds for their inactivity. These wind farms are in large groups and need accessibility by heavy vehicles to be able to build and maintain them. Many of these wind farms have been built on peat field areas in Scotland. These peat fields are boggy and wet areas, and in their structure capture CO2 carbon from the atmosphere. Because of this, it enables peat fields to exist for the benefit of nature. When interfered with, CO2 escapes into the atmosphere. The amount of CO2 escaping from these areas is far greater than the saving made by having wind farms. Scotland has 60% of the UK peat fields. Destruction of peat fields are caused by draining them, compressing them, digging them up, and interfering with them. Scotland has removed 5 million trees to clear land to build wind farms. Only a third of the trees have been replaced. 17,283 acres of forestry have been cleared for wind farms. In December of 2015, the Forth Road Bridge had to be closed, and as a result of that, it exposed the gross negligence of the Scottish National Party's administration. The Scottish National Party's priorities were for Nicola Sturgeon to travel to Paris to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference with all the self-importance of a head of state. And in the meanwhile, the closure of the Forth Road Bridge struck a severe blow to Scotland's economy and climate change arrangements. No matter how much Nicola Sturgeon might claim she was able to reduce Scotland's carbon emissions, it was nothing compared to the increase her government's failure generated by creating additional and longer road and rail journeys that belched out copious fumes over the months that followed. For the public affected by the SNP's incompetence and indifference, in Fife and Lothian, it must surely be a bridge too far. Due to extensive extra mileage and time travel, many businesses claimed compensation amounting to tens of millions of pounds due to the failure of the SNP to meet its responsibility for the bridge. It is beyond any doubt that the Scottish Government handled the COVID-19 pandemic in care homes appallingly. The important question is, why? The SNP had failed to distribute emergency funding from Westminster to any care homes. 3 months into the crisis, and only £5,000 from local authority had gone to 15 care homes, with 1,100 staff. During the virus, Scottish care homes took the biggest hit in deaths. Care homes are privately owned and responsible for care. In May 2020 and June 2020, last year, during the pandemic, most elderly people were in hospital rather than care homes. Nicola Sturgeon and Jean Freeman realised that hospitals might get a pandemic tsunami, and that National Health Scotland might need spare beds. As a result of this, care homes were forced by the Scottish administration to accept new residents from hospital. This was without knowing their COVID-19 status. Official orders were placed on the Scottish National Health website for care homes by Nicola Sturgeon and Jean Freeman to say that no testing was available. But this order was then later removed. Hospital patients were transferred untested into care homes to free up beds for the expected tsunami of COVID-19. Care homes were still not being tested. A quote from Jim on the 29th of June 2020 states, "My father died in a care home, and so many people hold Sturgeon responsible for the vast amount of deaths in these care homes." 6 families lost a loved one in the same home as my father. This home couldn't get PPE. None to be had. Probably still in a container in Glasgow Airport. Yes, they should buy their own. But when people get sent out of hospital into homes without being tested, that is not down to the home. This virus might not have made much difference to your life, but it has made a vast amount to mine, and still is. My own treatment has stopped for the past 3 months, not looking for sympathy, just stating a fact. A whistleblower reported people being sent to care homes clearly ill with COVID-19. Freeman and the SNP blamed care homes for not following the correct protocol. The SNP and Jean Freeman said on the 18th of May 2020 that they would not do any tests on residents in care homes because they did not want to distress the residents by having swabs done. The decision to discharge elderly patients from hospital into care homes without testing, compounded by patchy testing, caused a big problem. In May 2020, Nicola Sturgeon accepted that the policy of transferring patients from hospital to care homes without testing had cost lives. Failure by National Health Scotland to test care home residents and staff at the start of COVID-19, as well as shortages of PPE equipment withheld by National Health Scotland under Jane Freeman, left care home residents and staff unprotected and at risk. Nicola Sturgeon failed to have any patients being discharged from hospital into care homes tested. Mandatory screening, introduced in April 2020 by Health Secretary Jane Freeman, was a shocking practice of moving potentially infectious patients into homes. 921 people were discharged from care homes without testing in March 2020, and a further 510 in April 2020. This problem quickly spread the virus through the care homes. Elderly patients were routinely sent back to care homes from hospital without a test, and that contributed to thousands of deaths. Figures show that 47% of all deaths were in care homes. The Army had planned to go into nursing homes to do testing in March 2020. However, both Nicola Sturgeon and Jane Freeman withdrew this idea. A lack of carers meant staff had to move around various homes, and this therefore helped spread the virus. Staff and residents not showing symptoms of COVID-19 were responsible for spreading it in care homes. This came after reports of care home workers forced to queue in busy supermarkets several times a day for basics like bread and milk. No arrangements had been made for frontline workers to have priority, and so risked further spread of the virus as they could not secure delivery slots that they needed to provide for their residents. A care home reported that 141 residents from 9 of their 15 homes tested positive. Sadly, 48 died in 8 of their homes. 4 years ago, an audit identified a lack of PPE, but this was never acted upon by the Scottish National Party. In May 2020 last year, a plane load of PPE from China sat on Prestwick Airport for 2 weeks. And again in June 2020, a further plane load of PPE from China sat on the tarmac at Prestwick for 3 weeks. In May of 2020, National Health Scotland was given priority of PPE supplies in hospitals over care homes. So mismanagement and a lack of PPE resulted in 2,438 elderly people dying. While England built additional hospitals to protect the National Health Service, in Scotland, under the guidance of Jane Freeman, the Scottish National Health Service moved elderly people from hospital to care homes. This was a directive, not a choice for the care homes. The pandemic moved through the care homes like a tsunami and resulted in 2,438 dead. On the 10th of May 2020, out of a total of 3,213 deaths in Scotland, 2,438 were in care homes. In England, new hospitals called Nightingales were built, ensuring enough beds available for COVID-19 virus people. The Labour and Conservative members of the Scottish Parliament Both insisted on a full public inquiry about how this national tragedy turned into a national scandal. Petitions and requests went unheeded. In May of 2020, elderly patients in hospital in Scotland had a do not attempt to resuscitate form slipped into their discharge notes. This left them living in fear and anxiety. A care home on Skye was fast to declare a death, this being the domain of Ian Blackford. Blame for the care home death quickly moved from the devolved administration to the care home owners. In June of 2020, the Scottish National Party made care home staff a coronavirus supplement of £230. A pathetic amount in relation to their own parliamentary pay increases. If you had made an expensive purchase, discovered it would be 3 years late, it was not going to be what you ordered, twice the price quoted, no sign of delivery, you would want an explanation. 2 new ferries, which were intended for Arran and the Hebrides, cost the Scottish taxpayer £200 million. This was an example of an embarrassing and costly public project that ran aground. The 2 ferries that were ordered in 2015 are still gathering rust in a dry dock. Ferguson Marine won the contract in 2015 and went into administration in 2018 with debts of £49 million before being taken into public ownership. The Scottish National Party said ferry owners Kalmar were to blame. The Scottish National Party claimed that because Ferguson began work before they agreed the final specifications and did not come to an agreement about any possible overrun costs, it was therefore Ferguson's responsibility. Meanwhile, Kalmar still says it never wanted dual-fuel vessels using marine diesel and liquefied natural gas. Jim McCall, who took on Ferguson's in 2014, said, "The system would never have provided a benefit." The Scottish National Party, however, insisted on liquefied natural gas as a green gimmick. They prematurely announced the order was a viable one so that they could steal a march on a Tory spending commitment at Faslane. The whole ferry project was dangerously vague. It failed to provide adequate scrutiny of how public money was spent. No one stepped in to prevent matters getting any worse. Disagreements with the builders and of various SNP politicians had made the project unworkable. Alex Salmon in 2014 and Nicola Sturgeon in 2015 failed to make this ferry proposal work, as did the then Finance Minister Derek Mackay and the present Finance Minister Kate Forbes. Many others in the Scottish National Party have also failed to make this ferry project happen. After failures in ScotRail, failed hospital builds in Glasgow, Edinburgh and Aberdeen, it is a dismally familiar complaint. The latest mess ridicules our proud shipbuilding heritage and shows up the basic incompetence of the Holyrood devolved administration. The Scottish National Party have been incapable in a host of costly public projects. They do not exercise even the most minimal oversight or accept a basic measure of accountability. These situations are happening all the time. Because of the failed ferry situation, Orkney were forced to organise their own ferries. The latest vessel to link Orkney and the Scottish mainland via the Pentland Fair has arrived in local waters from Vietnam. MV Alfred is being hailed as the most environmentally friendly ferry of its kind in Scotland, with a shore-based wind turbine providing power when the vessel is docked overnight, and energy-efficient LED lighting throughout on board. Built in Vietnam, it left Vietnam in August 2019, arrived October 2019. Alfred has space for up to 430 passengers and 54 cars and 12 articulated vehicles or coaches. From start to finish, the ferry fiasco has shown a complete failure of any SNP official to have the ability to conduct business in Scotland's interests. In July 2020, it was reported that the Scottish National Party, after nationalising the yard with a taxpayer-funded bailout, called in a consultant to advise on how to run the shipyard at an additional expense to the taxpayer of £200 million. In February 2020, 4 members of Ferguson Marine management team had to sign off agreements which included clauses preventing them from criticising SNP ministers. Nicola Sturgeon's famous saying was, "Judge me on education." Well, Nicola Sturgeon was shamed in July 2020 as it was revealed that the schools had not been inspected for a decade or more. Opposition politicians called for urgent action when Freedom of Information figures showed that 603 primaries had not been inspected for more than 10 years. The most outstanding was the Highlands Council, followed by Aberdeenshire Council. It was 17 weeks into lockdown last year before a policy to buy laptops was announced intended to assist disadvantaged children who might be adversely affected by school closures. The SNP bought 25,000 laptops, but only one was used. The SNP did not know which children needed the laptops and had been promised to them during the coronavirus school shutdown. The learning tools, a £9 million scheme to support disadvantaged children during the pandemic, were for children at risk of falling behind classmates because of a lack of access to IT or broadband. Since the 23rd of March 2020, schools had been closed and most pupils were required to study from home, but the computers had remained in storage. They cost £360 each, which in itself was a scandal. 4 months into lockdown, and it was still not sorted. Beyond Magenta is a transgender book for teens, containing graphic descriptions of oral sex carried out by children as young as 6, without any mention of it being illegal or harmful. It is promoted in youth sections of libraries. The book, Transgender Teen Speaks Out, tells a story of 6 young adults and their journey embracing transgenderism. Parents were furious as a drag queen called Flowjob, who shares sexual content online, visited the Primary 1 class at Paisley Primary School. Flowjob read a story to kids aged 4 up to Primary 7 at Glencoach Primary School, Paisley, as she visited along with MP Mary Black. Gaelic-speaking island communities could vanish within 10 years. Daily use of Gaelic is too low in the Western Isles, Skye and Tiree to sustain it as a community language for the future. The Scottish Government says Gaelic is a vital part of Scotland's cultural identity, and they support efforts to improve its use. Researchers from the University of the Highlands and Islands carried out a study and found the language was in crisis, and that within Scotland the use of Gaelic was very little used. Nevertheless, the SNP have spent millions of pounds on Gaelic road signs and on police cars. There are immense challenges in reversing the decline of Gaelic in island heartlands. Statistical evidence indicates the Gaelic community are around 11,000 people. The majority are 50 years and over. Research would seek to remove the policy from a school system in order to create fluent Gaelic speakers. On the 24th of May 2020, a video praising Nicola Sturgeon was removed from STV after viewers compared it to dictator Kim Jong-un. The video created by Scottish television shows children showering Nicola Sturgeon with praise for keeping them safe in the coronavirus pandemic. The kids said, apparently reading from a script, "Children of Scotland would like to say thank you to Nicola, our First Minister. We are so grateful. Thank you for always keeping us safe, working so hard, being strong for us." The clips immediately provoked an uproar among viewers, with many declaring that it really is akin to North Korea, where uncritical praise of the dear leader looks like this. The SNP have mismanaged large-scale projects from Edinburgh to Aberdeen. These are another two of them. Holyrood is responsible for the maintenance of the Forth Road Bridge. The SNP introduced the abolition of tolls on the bridge. They were aware of the impact on finances when legislation was passed. The tolls were producing an income of £12 million each year. That is a loss to the bridge of £60 million over the last 5 years. This money could have gone towards the £10 million needed to replace bearings and joints on the bridge. The cost of painting the bridge was £65 million. The SNP underspend in 2013 and 2014 was £444 million on transport. For 2014 and 2015, it was £347 million. Decisions made in Edinburgh caused a false economy that delayed bridge maintenance on the most important short section of public highway in Scotland. Had ministers kept their eye on the ball, they could have made spending decisions to fit the country's needs, such as repairing the failing Forth Road Bridge. The SNP have been in power since 2007, and they received a report about structural faults in 2009. However, they failed to meet targets on these structural faults that required maintenance. They were costed at £10 million, but were then shelved indefinitely. The Scottish National Party and their ministers of transport over that time should have been held to account. Stuart Stevenson, Keith Brown, and now Derek Mackay, together with their first ministers, to whom they reported, Salmon and Sturgeon, all have questions to answer. Many motorists were affected by the closure of the Queen's Ferry crossing, which included a long detour. The SNP Transport Secretary had the audacity to acclaim that weather like that was extremely rare in Scotland. He dithered and delayed about the installation of ice sensors on the crossing. Not good for an administration taking its eye off the ball on a £1 billion project. Looking across Scotland, It is a familiar story of delays, cancellations, and ongoing problems with infrastructure projects. Users of Aberdeen Ring Road wouldn't hold back in telling you the delays they faced in its opening. Under this SNP administration, Scotland's economy is sluggish and lacks ambition. All Under One Banner are a branch of the SNP who march and protest all over Scotland. They assume the Saltire belongs to them rather than to all the people of Scotland. They also assume that the Declaration of Arbroath justifies their claim for independence, neither of which is true. They organise marches around the towns and cities of Scotland to drum up support for their cause. I suspect it is an excuse for a day out at the SNP's expense. They project an estimated attendance with inflated figures and give the impression of getting large numbers attending. However, they never declare the numbers that actually do attend. And I have it on record by family on the street that at Inverness the 11,000 was actually 300. Various unionist organisations have done video counts of all Under One Banner marches, such as at Glasgow, and have confirmed this to be true. They use the Saltire as a rally point, and so consider this to be the SNP flag. No, it is not. They also assume that the Declaration of Arbroath justifies their claim to Scottish independence. The Declaration of Arbroath is historical in its association with the Kings of Scotland. All Under One Banner wrongfully claim it was a letter from the people of Scotland to the Pope of the time to award them independence. It was, in fact, a letter from nobles and barons and Robert de Bruce of Scotland to allow them to associate with the King of England. All Under One Banner maintain the Declaration of Arbroath justifies a continual claim for independence by them. No, it does not. All Under One Banner march and disrupt towns and cities throughout Scotland in the name of independence and the Scottish National Party. They are simply a bunch of hooligans on a day out. Prestwick was bought by Nicola Sturgeon when she was Economy Secretary in 2013. During her time, it has built up tens of millions of pounds of debt. Plans are that Prestwick could become freight only in a sell-off. It went on sale in 2019 after the SNP put £40 million into the loss-making facility. The Scottish National Party were far too slow in making the changes needed to turn Prestwick around when bought. The result is that it is doubtful that they will get back the £50 million they put in. The airport is now operated on a commercial basis at arm's length from the Scottish Government. Prestwick was being used unsuccessfully as a testing station for COVID-19 in June 2020. And because no one was using it, the army had nothing to do and so sat around drinking tea all day. Only a trickle of people were swabbed for coronavirus at Prestwick testing station. Testing was seen as critical to getting Ayrshire back to normal. Sources say that very few individuals had been given the throat and nose probe at Prestwick. A 55-year-old flood victim man said, "I'm furious that I had my car destroyed at the SNP-owned site. I was sitting in a pub in Spain, having a drink, and happened to go online to see my car flooded in a picture on the news. Dozens of families arrived back at the airport on that day to find their cars underwater. They effectively put me into debt. I now need more than £30,000 from the airport. AIG are still investigating the cause of the flooding. It is understood the bow burned backed up, overwhelming existing flood defences at Car Park 3. The car park is owned and managed by Glasgow Prestwick Airport, and the ultimate owner is the Scottish administration. In July 2020, Sturgeon was completely against air bridges for travel, as suggested by Boris Johnson, saying she won't have them. Yet Ryanair were actually running flights as normal from Prestwick. There were not many passengers. However, this was in contradiction with the First Minister's policy at the time. On the 8th of July 2020, Nicola Sturgeon condemned Boris Johnson's approach to the air bridge travel row as shambolic. Sturgeon excluded Spain from her list of air bridges when their daily new case rate was 383. On the 20th of July, she added Spain to her list of air bridges when their daily new case rate had jumped to 1,527. The news reported thousands of Scottish people stranded and completely devastated by following her advice. 14 days in quarantine would destroy them financially. All done by Nicola Sturgeon, simply to be different from the Prime Minister of the UK. Humza Yousaf gave a threatening and abusive tirade in the Scottish Assembly in Holyrood that was sectarian, bigoted, and incited hate. The police in Edinburgh should have investigated it. The hate crime carried out by the Justice Minister, Humza Yousaf, was that he was spitting out the word white several times. Scotland's indigenous population are 96% white. How many appointments were applied for by non-white applicants raises a question. Were there equal numbers of candidates from ethnic backgrounds for all those positions? If yes, there could be a case for what he said. But unless we know the background of the other candidates, we can't make an informed decision on what was said. Derek Mackay, in January 2020, whilst the Finance Minister for the SNP bombarded a 16-year-old schoolboy with inappropriate creepy texts. It was widely thought that his behaviour and conversations by text to the schoolboy would result in his dismissal, and at least that charges by the police would take place. Neither of this happened, and as with the other SNP politicians found to be in inappropriate situations, all was swept under the carpet. Derek Mackay disappeared for 6 months, and in August 2020 was given £44,000 of taxpayers' money as a parting gift. Remember 2014, when the SNP promised us a rich, independent Scotland based on a mega oil boom? £300,000 for every man, woman and child we were promised. Well, guess what? Oil prices have dropped and they're almost worthless in the oil business. Another SNP lie laid bare. The argument that Westminster keeps any of Scotland's tax revenue is completely untrue. Scotland spends more in Scotland than the taxes it raises. This does not include defence, international aid, or debt interest. It is simply not true that Westminster keeps any of Scotland's tax revenues. It is a grievance made by the Scottish National Party supporters on social media. The figures are compiled by the Scottish Administration Economist in St Andrew's House and therefore qualify as national statistics. The figures that we raise in tax revenue is £63 billion. We keep £35 billion. Westminster keep £28 billion. Westminster spends £12 billion on our behalf, like nuclear, military, and UK debt repayments. Arguments can be made about an independent Scotland, but it's simply not true to suggest that Westminster keeps any of the money Scotland raises in tax. More is spent in Scotland than is raised in taxes. At present, it's clear an independent Scotland could not provide public services at anything like the level people expect. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. You can lead a nationalist to data, but you cannot make them think. On the 9th of July 2020, Chancellor's economic plan of £30 billion to the UK resulted in a leading economist saying that the £21 million claim by SNP Finance Secretary Kate Forbes was not true, and she should have apologised for misleading voters about the coronavirus financial support package for Scotland. She posted on Twitter that the £30 billion announced by the UK Chancellor for support of the Scottish economy would only be £21 million. However, an expert analyst showed the £21 million only referred to apprenticeship funds. Scotland's budget increased by £800 million through the Barnett formula. Increased spending on the health service took the overall total to £4.6 billion. Part of the UK spending included job retention to support jobs and VAT cuts to help the economy. Scotland's economic share actually came to £1 billion. Kate, as usual, was technically correct, but failure to provide clarity meant the overall picture led to confusion. In the 2018-2019 fiscal year, Chris Law, Ian Blackford and Brendan O'Hara topped the UK Parliament's expenses list by claiming a combined total of over £760,000, in addition to their normal salary. The three MPs with the highest expenses claims at Westminster were all SNP. Ian Blackford claimed £256,780.73. Brendan O'Hara claimed £247,895.01. Chris Law claimed a total of £259,866.85. Are the Scottish National Party as fast and loose with governing Scotland as they are with their own expenses? Typhoons from Lossiemouth scrambled on 2nd June 2020 to monitor Russian long-range aircraft flying in international airspace over Scotland. Russian aircraft were turned away once again as the RAF protected our skies, responding to provocation without hesitation. The dangerous flying of Russian aircraft towards our airspace is a clear reminder of the threat we face on a daily basis. Monitoring of Russian activity ensures safe passage for all aircraft, including transatlantic airliners. A Voyager aircraft gets launched for air-to-air refueling. This is a recently new VIP configured aircraft. Security of Scotland is in safe hands by being part of the United Kingdom. The cost is a shared one with all four nations. UK spending in Scotland to help fight against coronavirus has topped £10 billion. A published breakdown includes money through the Barnett formula. Scotland's share is of the Job Retention Scheme, Self-Employed Income Support Scheme, and business loans and other spending. This support for Scotland's fight against COVID-19 comes from being part of the UK. Finally, it is not for me to judge how you might vote in the May 2021 elections. It will be for you to decide. All I can do is present you with the facts from the SNP's last 14 years. It is interesting to note that the First Minister of Scotland is on a higher salary than the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The Scottish National Party do not keep minutes or notes of meetings and quickly shred any written emails or notes. Handwritten notes are immediately torn up. No accounts for Westminster money or any other financial dealings are kept. All of that makes it extremely difficult to pin any blame on the system or people involved. The SNP principle is to be in power, but not accountable. The Scottish National Party and its immediate friends have taken Scotland down the road of disrupting our relationship with England. They have and are dividing the people of Scotland with each other. And they have and will continue destroying the financial and business infrastructure of Scotland's future.